Good evening, Xavier Basketball fans. It's the RaGing X Report with Jim Reeker and Bill Gabriel. Well, fans, the Musketeers have dropped to 11-13 overall, 3-8 in the Big East. Some dark days. Just seems like it won't quit raining, Bill. How you doing tonight, Bill?
I'm good, Jim. And I agree. It will not stop raining, both outside around here and for the Muskies.
Oh man, we've weathered a lot, and this is I don't know. I hope we've hit rock bottom, but I'm not sure with this group. So let's talk about Saturday night, a dark evening for the Musketeers, a 74-62 loss at Cintas. Didn't realize this till later. Read and somebody actually, a friend of mine, texted to me. In just first time DePaul had won at the Cintas Center in 9 tries. Tear it apart. What happened?
Well, I thought, they played really pretty well up until about 5 minutes and 28 seconds to go in the game. They really, I thought, ran their offense for the most part pretty well most of the game up to that point. They probably had I think they had maybe 4 or 5 turnovers at that point in the half for the previous 15 minutes, which for them is a pretty average number. And then, man, the wheels fell off the cart. 5:28 to play in the game, up 57-53, 5 straight turnovers.
Yeah, and I can even take it further than that. 3:36 left in the game. Still 3.5 minutes is when it was last tied, 57-57. Still a game, and from that point on, got outscored 17-5 in the last 3.5 minutes. And of course, the ugly word everybody knows. You hear it. Everybody was asked what happened. That word. It's been a problem all year. Turnovers.
Yep. And then I think that leads to other poor. I think the turnover. They just make poor offensive decisions. I think Steele mentioned it. He says they keep trying to hit home runs instead of taking the easy, the simple play, and that's going to cause your turnovers. It's going to cause you to take bad shots because you get in situations where you got to force something up, or you don't. I just think that it's an immaturity, but that's the same immaturity they've been fighting all year. They're just not getting through that.
There's a theory out there, and let me try this one with you, and kind of shocked me a little bit. Didn't realize. I knew it was kind of this way. In fact, I said to you, starting lineup was the 2 bigs, which we've seen some recently, but it was the 2 bigs and also Quentin Gooden, Paul Scruggs, and Najee Marshall. The other times the 2 bigs started, Quentin wasn't in there. So really, I really believe, maybe wrong, but I think that was the first time that 5 had started. And actually, really, I think they're the 5 best players. Now, you may argue it may not be their best starting lineup against certain teams playing 2 bigs. But when I looked at the minutes of the guys off the bench, only 3 guys came off the bench. Neither freshman made the floor. And Ryan Welledge only played 8 minutes. Elias Harden only played 10 minutes. Kyle Casson got in 22 minutes, although he failed to score. Theory out there is that maybe their starters, or at least the big 3, are playing too many minutes. Thus, by the end of the game, they're tired, thus leading to fatigue, thus leading to sloppy play and the turnovers. Do you buy that?
To an extent. I also think I think you got to have that it factor in somebody on your team that that's the guy you turn to when those moments are present. And they just don't have that kind of guy. I mean, I think they have some pretty good players athletic-wise, but they just don't have the I'm the guy, jump on my back. I'm going to take you to where we need to go for those 2 or 3 minutes. They had that last year. They had 2 guys that could do it. I mean, they really, with JP and Trayvon. And, every year you step, Kieran Canner could have been the 3rd, yeah. And then you step back and you look at, we just go through the laundry list of guys who were that guy, and this team just doesn't have it.
Yeah, I think kind of what you're alluding to or what we're talking about is maybe maturity. Again, the big 3, as have sometimes been called, Gooden, Marshall, and Scruggs, all talented players, but maybe not the players that play as well when they are the focal point, better role players. And again, we have to remember Najee Marshall's only a sophomore. Paul Scruggs is only a sophomore. Paul Scruggs didn't even play a lot until the second half of last year. Quentin Gooden, again, the most experienced. I think sometimes maybe, especially to Xavier fans, is the most frustrating because maybe he should be the one with the most experience who sometimes should be the calming, mature factor. And I know you and I talk about it, but we see him make, again, turnovers. He only had 3 turnovers officially compared to Marshall's 5 and Scruggs' 6. But again, he seems to make poor decisions. One thing I remember in the first half, he went to take a shot, which I think he thought was going to be blocked, and he just dropped the ball and let it bounce, and then he didn't want to pick it up, fearing he'd be called for double dribble. I don't know. It looked silly. Didn't look like something that maybe a 6th or 7th grader would do in a game. So I think the fans are frustrated with Quentin Gooden.
I can see that point. I think that's pretty true. And
I will, since I'm going to bang on him, I will give him a lot of credit because Max Strus, who we know can just go off for DePaul, he was on him most of the night and really held him in check. He did end up being their leading scorer with 17 points, but I believe he only had 2 at half, and probably he made a lot of points there in that 17-5 run. Probably picked up maybe 8 or 10 of his final points in that last run. So really, Quentin Gooden did a great job, I think, on defense on him, keeping him in check, and he held him. I think he and Najee held him to 10 points total up at DePaul. So
yeah, and that could be that fatigue factor again kicking in at the end.
And again, here's another. I looked this up. This kind of surprised me. What is their turnover rate or average for the season? And it's 13.4, which you would probably say, yeah, that's probably about right. Might think that's a little low. But you have to remember they've had some very good games. 3 turnovers. I remember one game which I think set a school record. I remember one game they had 7. So they've had some good games. But compared to last year, this will probably surprise you. What do you think last year's team averaged turnovers per game? Again, 13.4 for this team.
Yeah, I would say they were probably 15.
Now they were actually 12.6, but again, that's only less than 1 less. Of course, again, we sit back and look at it. It is the total number of turnovers, but more than that, as you alluded to, it's when the turnovers are taking place. I mean, it's almost like a bad movie we see over and over. Last 5 minutes, they are in the game with a lead and close, just need to, and they can't finish and just turn into a turnover machine. I believe you can help me recollect. I think somebody said 6 straight possessions with a turnover in that last stretch. I don't know if that's true or not. That may be a little high, but
yeah, I definitely know it was 5. Because I went through their play-by-play line sheet, and from the 5:28 mark, they immediately committed 5 straight turnovers.
Yeah, and again, the other, I think you and I probably felt the same, and I think there was a general feeling. There was a pretty low point and disheartening in the Cintas Center near the end of that game. It was kind of like, what? And again, there were improvements. I thought they played really well deep. I mean, they held them to 57 points with 3.5 minutes left. That's a pretty good, effort by a Division I team against another Division I opponent who's not a bad opponent. So, well, the talk's out there. Is this the worst team in modern basketball history? I usually refer to modern Xavier basketball history as when Bob Stack arrived. And if you just want to look at the numbers, you got to go back to, well, we talked about, I think, last time they didn't make the tournament. 2012-13, they finished 17-14. You got to go back to the next time they didn't make the tournament, 04-05. They were 17-12. I looked this up. Maybe you have it too, but it kind of surprised me. I wasn't quite sure it had ever happened since Bob Stack, but it has. Last losing record overall of a Xavier team. Do you know when that was?
Yeah, I got it right in front of me. Skip Prosser, 1995, 1996. They were 13-15. That was our. That was wasn't that their inaugural year in the A10?
It was, and again, but I remember that year. And what was different about that year is you had, I believe, Gary Lumpkin, Lenny Brown, Darnell Williams, and James Posey were all freshmen.
Yeah.
So even though, Xavier had taken a step up from the MCC, the A10 was, a notch above that, you felt good about that team because you saw them getting better, and you knew there was a lot of talent and a lot of very talented guys that were getting a lot of minutes as freshmen that were going to be good players in the future, and obviously that rang true. I don't get that feeling from this team. In fact, I've read some of the boards, and a lot of the fans are saying, I don't feel they're playing hard anymore. It seems like something's missing, something's wrong, something's lost. And I don't know. What's your take on the whole overall mood of the team?
Well, I got to thinking about that, and I did a little digging on the internet, and somebody had posted this somewhere. They had a subscription to one of those sports data number cruncher sites, and one of the interesting things was there's a metric that measures your like every Xavier team, and according to that metric, this is like their 28, like however you want to look at it, one being best. This is the 28th season. Like there's only 27 other teams that were better than this team in this metric. So they were ahead of that. Miller and Max, 17 win. Each one of those guys had a 17-win season, and it was a measure of the strength of schedule along with the margin of victory or defeat. And so you think about that, I'm like, well, they're in games. I mean, it's not like they're just getting ran out the gym.
They're in Big East games.
Yeah. And I mean, they lost. So looking at it, their downfall this year, the last 10 minutes of Big East games, they've won that time frame 3 times in Big East games. Those are their 3 wins.
Yeah, I saw that stat too. And that's,
and then they had 5 that they lost there, where they had the leader, were tied with 10 minutes to go and lost the game.
Yeah. And you got it, the MCC is today, for those who don't know the history of all the leagues, is really the Horizon League now, teams that stayed there. This team's in the Horizon. They probably have a 500 or better record, maybe close to the top, but they're not in the Horizon. And, of course, I don't think Xavier fans want them to be in the Horizon. No slight at Northern Kentucky because they're in the Horizon now, right? The Norse?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
And, I think part of it is I thought about this, I think we've become spoiled, so to speak. and we really haven't seen, this bad of a downturn. But, it was in the cards that there was a lot of change going on, a lot of moving parts. Loss of 4 of their best players. Loss of JT McCura, who's playing in the NBA now. Loss of Trayvon Blewitz on an NBA roster. Loss of Karim Kanter, I think, is playing somewhere in Europe. And Sean O'Mara, I think, is playing somewhere in Europe or South America. 4 key players they lost, and then you throw in on top of that a poor recruiting class, the loss of a 10-year coach. I think we step back. We can't be totally shocked that it's happening the way it is. I think we always feel like that Xavier mystique, somehow they're going to make good of the season. So, again, I think I was maybe a little more optimistic. I think we were talking about our predictions. You reminded me that I said they'd be 9-9. They're 3-8, so they'd have to pull off a 6-1 finish in the last 7 games for that. I think you had said maybe 6-10.
Yeah, I think that's what I had, something like that.
So and who knows if they can even get to that. Maybe a silly question, but I throw it out there. I don't know, the powers to be, AD, whoever, president, are they concerned? Obviously, they're not going to fire Travis Steele after this first year, especially the situation he's given. We know he has a great recruiting class coming in. That's one of the things that, people say he's maybe a better recruiter than Chris Mack. So he'll have, I think, at least 2 more seasons unless next year just falls apart some way. Then, but in this day and age, of course, the pressure's on to win in college sports, especially when all the big money. But what are your thoughts on that? How many years does he get?
I think he gets 3 years minimum. I mean, he gets this year plus 2 more. I'd say if they are not successful, barring really obvious reasons like 5 guys get hurt who are going to be their starters through the season, goofy stuff like that. I mean, I think because next year I think they're going to start quite a few freshmen. If not, they're playing a lot of minutes because they got some pretty good guys coming in. I was just looking at that class again today. You got 3 4-stars and 2 3-stars coming in, with Kiki Tandy, Demir Bishop, and Zach Freeman being the 4-stars, and that's a point guard, a shooting guard, and a power forward, which really are going to help them give some guys some minutes of rest on the bench and help them out. They got a 3-star power forward, Daniel Ramsey, and a center, Deontay Miles, coming in, who may be a bit more of a project, but hey, he's tall dude and looks somewhat athletic in the stuff I've seen on him. So I think he's going to get a year to mature them, and then see how their sophomore campaign goes. And then if you look at he'll have another freshman coming in that year who's a 4-star, and he may be knocking on the door of moving up. I can't remember his name. I forgot to write that down, but because that stuff can change. It's just a verbal right now. So, but I think he's going to get that, and I think the second reason is they are competing. I mean, they're losing close games. They're losing them at the end. Silly mistakes. I'm sure he'd love to grab people off the bench, and I don't know. Either those guys aren't ready. They just took them because they needed to have somebody on the bench and at practice and stuff. I mean, they were just maybe kind of stuck. I think that, Mac leaving, the uncertainty of him really hurt the recruiting. He was able to get those grad transfers. And I think if he can pull off another Zach Hankins type grad transfer coming in next year, with those freshmen, they could end up being growing into a pretty competitive team. with the talent that's coming in. So he's going to get that time.
Yeah, and I got to look at, I think they may mirror Georgetown. Look at the freshmen Georgetown have right now, playing a lot of minutes and playing very well. Providence has some freshmen that are playing a lot of minutes. So I think, and both those teams, well, we'll talk about the Big East here in a minute, but both of them are sitting at 5 and 6 right now. But I think, both of those fan bases are probably pretty happy, especially Georgetown. Georgetown had, before Patrick Ewing got there, it really kind of bottomed out. And, a question I have written down, as Xavier looks at it, is it harder? I mean, you have to say we were one of the top 4 teams in the country last year, getting the number 1 seed going to the NCAA. We're right near the pinnacle of college basketball. Is it harder to maintain that once you get there than to keep progressing as Xavier has done for the last 30 years through 3 leagues, moving up and up and up with their success? And maybe that's what we'll have to, we'll find out that it's a long way to the top, but it's harder to stay there, especially when people know who you are. I mean, 20 years ago, you say Xavier University, not a whole lot of people would know where it is or have any idea anything about their basketball team. And I'd say now, even the average fan knows that Xavier Basketball has been on the map in college basketball, at least for the last 10 years with their success in the NCAA. And actually, again, winning the Big East regular season last year. We forget that. Hopefully it's not a first to worst scenario for the Musketeers. Any other input on that or ideas? Again, it's the talk of the boards, and you got to expect it. We've become spoiled, Bill.
Well, here you want to know how spoiled we are. I was looking at this, and this is crazy. There have now this week there has been officially 100 Big East games played in the new Big East. Villanova has won 87 of their 100 games, so they're 87-13 overall. Guess who's number 2?
Probably Xavier.
Yep, at 60-40.
And actually, they had 2 99 seasons in those 5 years.
Yeah, and then there's you talk about like Georgetown, they're 42-58 in that same time period. St. John's is 37-63. So, I mean, it's going to be. We're at this level where we're in this conference where it is so competitive that if you have an off recruiting year, you're going to suffer. And I think anytime you'll see a coaching change, you're going to see that off year. And I think even when Patrick Ewing took over Georgetown, they played hard stuff, but they still had an off year.
Yeah, he didn't.
But now he's got some talent coming in. He's now that he's got some talent, he got these freshmen or kids coming in. So I kind of see the same thing. Creighton switched coaches. Or not Creighton, I'm sorry, Butler. And so they're not where they were. So I think we're a bit spoiled because of what we have had, and it's just I think it's an anomaly. At least I hope it is.
Well, I think Xavier fans would be happy if somehow they muster out at least a winning season, and even maybe win a game or two. The reality is there's still a great chance if they can get things turned around and win a few games of making the top 6 and not having to play one of those play-in games and have a chance of maybe even getting to the semifinals, and then who knows. So, of course, we always reflect back, or I always reflect back. I remember last time I maybe felt like this, 03-04. I remember that team just struggled right after Christmas and lost I don't know how many in a row, and thought, man, they're not going to go to the NCAA. This is going to be, March will be getting some yard work done. Won't we watch many basketball games? And all of a sudden that was the year they won 4 games in the A-10 tournament, upset number 1 St. Joe in the quarterfinals, and then went on to go all the way to the Elite Eight and almost upset Duke to make it to the Final Four. So I always keep that one in the back of my mind. You never know when maybe the light will go on, things will click. So I guess we'll just have to show up on Wednesday and hope for the best.
That's right.
All right, let's take a quick look for the fans at the Big East, or I guess this year they should call it the Big Two and the other 8.
Well, or you could call it the 5 and 6 Big East.
It's just amazing. I have written next to the standings here, parity or mediocrity. Which is it?
Both.
But I think we were talking about, you got a lot of teams in there that have a lot of very talented young players, and they play well sometimes, and sometimes they don't. Yeah, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the teams right there in the middle are 5 and 6. Providence and Creighton are tied for, I guess, officially 8th place at 4 and 7. And hate to say this, but the Musketeers own 10th place all of themselves right now with a 3 and 8 record. Well, the Nova Wildcats went down on their first loss at Marquette, although it was a closer game than I think the Golden Eagles wanted. They actually had a double-digit lead they let slip away, but were able to hold off Nova. I think we were both pretty right. We both picked Marquette to win it. My second choice was Nova. Yours was Seton Hall. Maybe a little bit biased, but I think Marquette, I feel they're still going to win it. I don't know. Maybe not, but they got another game together, so they can obviously tie it if they can, take care of business. I just got a feeling Nova's got a loss or two somewhere there, maybe on the road someplace, and I'm trying to look. They are at Providence and at St. John's this next coming week. Those are a couple tough places to play.
Right.
It wouldn't surprise me to see them lose one. And then what do we got with Marquette, who unfortunately would be tied right now, except they lost to St. John's, lost at home. That was kind of a surprise. I think it was the first game the Golden Eagles had lost at their new arena. They only have one game this week. They're at DePaul. So, and again, we know that could be a close game. This is a Big East year where I think anybody can beat anybody. But again, let's look at the positives. The Musketeers are only 2 games out of third place. That's the way I look at it. And if they can get things turned around and beat some of those teams, and you got to remember those teams are all going to be playing each other, so half of them are going to be losing every night. So hopefully, again, I think right now a really suitable goal is to finish in the top 6 of the Big East, again, to get that first round bye in the tournament.
Yeah, that would be nice to get.
Can't see them winning 4 games in New York City, and really would probably be tough to win 3 when it'd probably have to be Marquette, Villanova, Marquette if things fell the way you think. Although you never know. Sometimes those big seeds get upset early on, and, part of it may be because Nova and Marquette pretty much know they don't really have to do much in the tournament. They're going to make the NCAA. Any thoughts on the Big East overall before we move to the Creighton game? A little preview.
Nope. Let's take a look at the Creighton.
Well, give us your thoughts. I have a question I'll start out with, and you can go ahead and kind of remind us of Creighton. It wasn't too long ago, a little over a week, we played them out there. But we didn't do it out there, but do we start 2 bigs against Creighton?
So I'm going to hope that a better night's sleep will help Xavier out in this one, since they get to sleep in their own beds. And maybe the weather, Mother Nature can return the favor with the weather to Creighton and make their commute a little difficult. So just to make everything fair. But I also think that Creighton surprised them with 2 things that they had not done before. which was they played inside out, going through is it Martin Crumple,
Yes.
and he just had a field day, and Xavier wasn't ready for it, especially in the first half. And they played zone, which is not something that they do a lot. And they just basically sat back and said, "You're gonna have to hit three." And in reality, we're gonna make your two guys who don't shoot threes very well beat us with 3-pointers, which were Najee and Quentin. And if it wasn't for the fact that Quentin banged in a couple, his percentage would be a little off in that game. And so I think that's what their plan was. If they come in with the same plan, we do shoot better in the Cintas Center, so that's going to change things, hopefully. And, I think being rested, and then, they may go at them with two bigs and say, well, we can play inside out too. Who are you going to guard the other big with? And, just force them to do something. Hopefully, we can make them make the adjustment instead of the other way around.
Yeah, you just you never know who's going to be the advantage or disadvantage when you have a matchup like that. Is the big going to be able to post whoever's guarding him up and get easy points, or is the small shooting guard going to be able to just shoot all day over whoever it'd be? Probably be maybe Tyreek would be guarding somebody a little bit quicker and more nimble than him. That was a big surprise because they are a 3-point shooting team. I think in some games they even shoot more 3-pointers than they do 2-pointers. I looked up, they're shooting about 41% from 3-point. Martin Crumple, I think I may be off. I'm just pulling this out of the air, but it seemed like me he scored 23, 25 points, and he's only averaging about 12. So that was a big game for him. He is their big rebounder. Tyshawn Alexander is their normal leading scorer, and I've seen him, he is a 3-point shooter, can light it up. One thing I did note, I don't know if you saw anything of this, that Marcus Zagorowski, who played well in the first half but had the hand injury, I did notice he has not played the last 2 games, so I'm not sure if he will be available or not. I know he hurt the Musketeers in the first half out in Omaha. So I don't know if you saw anything on his availability or not.
No, I didn't see anything on that.
And the other difference we got an 8:30 start. I don't know if we've had an 8:30 start all year. Maybe the Musketeers just need a new starting time. The 6:30 games haven't played out well. So.
First time at home, I think, for that one.
Yeah, definitely. And for the fans, if you aren't going to the Cintas Center, I actually noticed that game is on a little bit different than normal, is CBS Sports Network on Wednesday evening at 8:30. Must be another Big East game on FS1 that evening. Sometimes that happens. All right, and then Saturday, this will be, didn't notice this until just today, taking on the Providence Friars at Providence. Of course, team we lost, I believe, was a 2-point loss at Cintas. But the other thing, that's a national game on Fox on Saturday. It will be on the big channel at 2 p.m. So remind us what we have to worry about with the Providence Friars.
Well, I think with Providence, if I'm remembering correctly from that last game, Xavier definitely had issues with their defensive pressure, and they are definitely an in-your-face, reaching, grabbing, riding, man-to-man defense. I think they operate under the premise that I've heard some coaches who run zone or full court trapping defenses say they're only going to call half the fouls. So it's what you make happen with the other half they don't call that matters. And in the case of Xavier in that game, they had 18 turnovers. I believe, if I remember right, that was like 30 fast break points off of those. By their definition of transition points, if I remember that right. I forgot to write that down. they're going to hit them with the same game plan because I think that's just their mode of operation. That's what they've done all year. They tend to use Alpha Diallo as kind of a distributor sometimes. And, he had a pretty quiet game against Xavier, but he still ended up as I think he was tied for their leading scorer. I can't remember exactly when I was looking at that. I know.
Actually, he's their leading scorer by far, 17 points a game, 8.3 rebounds. Yeah, he just, I've obviously watched the whole Xavier game. I've seen him play a couple other games, and he never impresses you. But you look at his stats, and you're like, the guy's getting it done. But he's just not flashy, I guess.
Yeah, he's just pretty solid. He's just, and I think that's why they use him a lot as a distributor of the basketball and run a lot of offense through him. And then one of their bench players, Isaiah Jackson, had a huge game against Xavier in that last time he had 13 points, and I think I was looking at his average is like 5 a game. So that was a big outburst for him. But Xavier's gonna see the same game plan, and I don't think they're going to deviate from that. So it's all about them handling that defensive pressure.
One guy that I've seen play that impresses me, and I was impressed when he played against Xavier here, was the Nate Watson. I think he only averages about 10 points and maybe 5 rebounds, but he's only a sophomore. But I just remember him making some nice moves underneath, and I was very impressed. And again, I think he's going to be a big-time player for the next 2 seasons of eligibility that he has left for the Providence Friars. Yeah, and I think if I recollect correct, wasn't it? That was a game we were down by 2 and had 3 possessions and turned it over twice, and then missed a last-second shot off by Paul Scruggs, or we could have tied or won that game.
Yes.
Another one got away.
Yep.
All right. Well, again, hopefully we've created better spirits for the Xavier fans tonight. Throw in a little tidbit before we go to trivia. I just saw good news for a Xavier alumni. Former player Edmund Sumner just today was signed to a full NBA contract with the Pacers. He had been on what they call a in-between contract, where he was playing part in the D League, G League, playing with a Fort Wayne team. Actually,
G League.
Averaging 23 points in that league, and had a couple starts with the Pacers, but he will be on the Pacers roster for the rest of the season, and actually inked a 2-year full NBA deal with him. So congratulations to Edmund Sumner. It's great to see that he's doing well after his tragic end to his career a couple years ago at St. John's when he tore his knee up about a little over halfway through the season, and that was the end for him. All right, ready for a little Musketeer trivia?
Let's go for it.
All right, this is easy to harder, okay? Currently, the Musketeers play at, what is the name of their facility?
With Centos Center.
I told you it'd be easy. Before that, from 1983 to 2000, they played at?
The Gardens.
Cincinnati Gardens. And before the Cincinnati Gardens, they played at a site on campus from 1928 to 1983, which we know as?
Oh, I had class in there, and I can't see the name of it, or near there. The
Fieldhouse?
Schmidt Fieldhouse.
And this one, if you get this one, I'll just be totally blown away because I didn't even know this. And from 1919 to 1928, do you know where the Musketeers played?
I do not.
I didn't either. A place called the Fenwick Club. Actually was downtown Cincinnati. It actually was located where the current P&G towers are. There's it was actually a Catholic, kind of a Catholic YMCA. It had facilities for men to work out, and they had a gym, and that's where the Musketeers played for the first 9 years of their basketball history. So I just saw that, thought that was kind of interesting, something that I didn't know. All right, 2 games. We're going to go 2-0 this week, right, Bill?
That's the plan.
All right. Any final thoughts or things to say before we sign off tonight?
I got nothing.
All right, so it's February the 11th, 2019. Musketeers are turning the corner and heading home. Hopefully things will pick up here. We want to thank Mike Goodpaster and the Grueling Truth Network for putting us out there and all the fans that listen to us every week. And with that, we'll say, go Muskies.
Go Muskies.